This is Jeff Blair from Sportsnet. I may not like chicken wings, but I do like the walk-off with Scott and Adam.
Very excited to be joined by today's guest, longtime insider for the Toronto Blue Jays, host of the Blair and Barker Show and Jays Talk on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Jeff Blair, welcome to the Walk-Off, man. Thanks so much for taking
Good to
the
be
time.
on. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
we're excited to talk some Blue Jays and baseball with you. Before we even get too into it, I just want to tell you, I've listened to you on 590 for years. I've always really enjoyed you on the radio. But I do want to say that I love the dynamic that you and Kevin Barker have developed over the last few years. You have this really, I guess, amusing way of disagreeing with each other, and almost like this odd couple ball-busting combo. Anyways, it's just great radio. Really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun with Kevin. I'm thinking back to when we first started out, and I can remember the first day that they paired us up, and we did a show, and the program director at the time said to me, "What do you think?" I said, "The guy is great." I said, I got to figure out a way to get the stories that he's telling me off air, on air, in a manner that will not result in the CRTC hammering us. And I think it took a while, I think, for Kevin to realize that I would ask him something. He'd go, "Well, I really don't want it. I mean, no one cares about that. That happened at AA. That happened at AAA. And I don't really want." I said, "Kevin, you got to understand, the people who are listening to you play beer league softball. You may think that your 4-home-run day in AA against some guy that nobody remembers in some ballpark you can't remember, doesn't matter." I said, "None of us have hit 4 home runs in a game. Trust me, it is a big deal." So once I could convince him that all that stuff that happened to him, sleeping half nude on a road in Montana at 2 a.m. because the bus broke down, all this stuff, that it was actually, it gave people an idea of what he was about and where he was coming from when he talked about things, that was actually sort of contributing and kind of contributing to what people thought about Kevin Barker. So once he got comfortable with me, and I think it's like anything else, once he realized that I wasn't going to throw him under the bus, I think once he realized that as someone who covered baseball for a long time and played it really poorly, I have a lot of respect for anybody who's been able to get, who's been paid money to play baseball. Once he realized that, I think he thought, okay, this guy is not going to, he's not going to throw me under the bus.
Oh, I eat stuff like that up. Like, that's why I listen to you too.
And the thing is, like, what I love about Kevin can't remember he got his first hit off of. Oh no, he can remember who he got his first hit off of, but he'll tell you a story. And I remember one story he was telling me about. He was on a horrible slump, so he sold his car. And I said, "Where was that?" And he said, "I can't remember." I said, You sold your car because you were in a slump? Did this happen every week? You can't remember it? And we had Sean Casey on one time, and this was earlier this year, and he was talking about the first time he met Kevin in spring training, right? And Sean was an established player, and here's Kevin Barker. And I just said to Sean, like, "What's the first thing you remember about Kevin Barker?" He said, "Well, I remember that he had this car. It was a Nova or something, and the license plate was first base. And it was in the players' parking lot. And I'm pulling in my fairly nice car, and I'm going, what the hell is this? What's this guy with first base on?" So I looked at Barker. I said, "I've been with you in the same room for 6 years. We've traveled on planes together, and you forgot to tell me that you had an old car with first base as a vanity plate?" Well, I don't know if anybody'd really think that was that interesting. So, yeah.
I like it, though. If doctors can do it, why can't first basemen?
That's what I thought, exactly. So you find all these things out about Kevin as you go along, and that's made it that's made it a lot of fun. It really has.
Well, it's been fun to listen to the show kind of develop, like it is really growing over the years. It has improved. Not that it wasn't enjoyable to start with, but it's kind of like you said, like Kevin just has opened up over the last couple of years so much
Yeah.
more, and it's just been fun to listen to. Yeah.
And I'll tell you the other thing too, when he first started talking about getting into swings and all that, I would kind of look at him and nod. And I'm not going to say who it was, but I've told Kevin the story though. And I ran into a Blue Jays coach who knew Kevin. And I said, I just got to ask you something. I mean this with all due respect to Kevin. And this has been, I guess we'd been together for about, I don't know, 3 months. I said, he talks a lot about hitting. Is he making sense? And the guy looked at me and said, oh yeah, he said he knows hitting. He could be a hitting coach. And I said, that's fine. Cause again, I haven't played and I getting into, worm burners and getting it down and getting it singing and toe tapping and stride separation. I don't know what the hell stride separation to a 60-year-old sports writer. I don't know what stride separation is. Anyhow, once I found out that from talking to this guy that, yeah, Kevin does understand hitting. Then it's like anything else. The chemistry takes a while to develop. There has to be a comfort zone. And after that, it's just a matter of making sure that the days that you dislike each other are relatively limited. And we've been able to do that. There have only been a couple of days where I would say that we probably really hate being in each other's presence.
Right. Well, that's pretty good over 6 years. That's not
bad. That's very good. I've had other co-hosts, believe me, it took a week to decide. If I'm not saying who.
So we'll talk some baseball here. I wanted to start with this just because I am very curious on your take of the umpiring we've seen across the league in the first 10 games or so. So we saw Charlie Montoyo lose his shit for like the first time I think I can remember this weekend. Folks who robo-ump was blasphemous to say too, or all of a sudden saying things like maybe it's the right thing to do, like people
I'm putting my hand up.
Okay, because I was going to tell you to talk us off the ledge here, because I know I've even said, is this the worst it's ever been? Because I'm in the camp that I've never seen it this bad. And you've covered baseball longer than some of our listeners have even followed the sport. Is it as bad as it seems like it is?
You're talking to someone who's probably seen 100 Angel Hernandez games. So, I mean, in some ways, I'm a wrong person to ask about this. What I think has happened, I assume that the umpiring is probably better now than it has ever been, because everything about sports is generally better than it has ever been. The athletes are better, technology is better, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what has happened is technology is so good that we're able to visualize an umpire's mistake in real time, right? I mean, I can remember when the strike box was a thing. I can remember when networks or stations wouldn't use it because fans didn't like it, because who the hell wants to see a square in the middle of the screen? And now we can see it. You can tell whether or not every pitch is a strike. Now we've got umpire scorecards, right, to grade umpires. So
I know too much almost.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a difference in terms of the attitude of umpires now. I think there's a little more arrogance on the part of especially young umpires. Generally, when an umpire came up, and I'm thinking, when I started covering baseball in the late 80s and 90s, a young umpire kind of had to earn his stripes. He had to earn his stripes with managers. He had to earn the respect of players. He had to earn the respect of other umpires. That I don't think is the case anymore. I think a lot of young umpires come up and, they've had access to technology. They've spent their entire minor league careers having their strike zones broken down in video. So I think there's this arrogance of approach. And I wouldn't say we have too much knowledge, but I think the umpires have more knowledge of their strengths and weaknesses than they've had in the past. And we have more knowledge of what their strengths and weaknesses are in the past. And I'm like, my original thought with robo umpires is it's a stupid idea. It's a dumbass idea. It's never going to work.
Yeah.
But, I admit, I envisioned RTD2 standing behind the plate, right? Going, strike. Well, that's what I did when I thought of robo umpires.
Right.
And I had a conversation with Morgan Sword at the commissioner's office. He said, no, what it is you have an umpire behind home plate because you're still going to have plays at the plate. But the umpire will have an electronic signaling device, and he will be told whether it is a ball or strike, and he'll still signal strike. But and I think it's coming. I don't think there's any doubt that we're going to see, I would say within maybe 2 years, 3 years, we're going to see an automated strike zone. But the problem baseball found when they started utilizing it in the minors is everybody uses Hawkeye technology as kind of the be all and end all, right? Everybody looks at the use of technology to determine whether a tennis ball is in or out, or in soccer to determine whether a ball is over the goal line. Everybody looks at that and says, well, if they can do that, why can't they do it in baseball? Well, the problem is the goal line in soccer is stationary. The tennis court is stationary. It doesn't vary whether I'm 6'1", 6'9", 5'3". Strike zones differ. And what baseball found in the minor leagues when they experimented with electronic strike zones is that the electronic measurement system, it wasn't a square, it was actually almost oval. So what has to happen for this to work in the majors, frankly, is for Major League Baseball to redefine the strike zone. And I think what we will see next off season is a different definition of the quote unquote classic strike zone. And once we see that, and I've got to tell you, I'm not certain players are going to like it when they hear it, but once we see that, I think then you can take a move into an automated strike zone. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Even if, I'll tell you what, even if tonight we snapped our fingers and every umpire in every game got the calls 100% right, it wouldn't matter. The automated strike zone is happening.
So I saw some stats on Twitter this morning that kind of opened my eyes a little. I kind of went, because listen, I've been an Alek Manoah fan since he was called up, but when you see it in black and white, so after making just 9 minor league starts, Alek Manoah started his MLB career. 22 games is what he's pitched so far, 11-2, a 3.06 ERA, 145 ERA plus, 1.04 whip, 10 Ks per 9. He had another dominant performance yesterday afternoon against the A's. How good can this kid be? Like, should we just be happy with what he's doing, or does his ceiling even exceed what we're seeing?
Yeah, I asked Dan Shulman that this morning, and Dan goes back to he goes way back before I do. He, of course, was a day one Jays fan, but he also covered the Jays when Halladay, Carpenter, and Escobar were coming up, and I was kind of at the tail end of that. I think my first year covering the Jays was when Roy Halladay actually went down to rebuild his delivery. So I don't have the mind's eye memory of Dave Stieb or any of those guys. Right? But from what I've seen, and I compare him to some of the other really good young pitchers I've covered, I'm kind of with Dan. I put him, I don't put him in the Halladay camp yet, obviously, because Roy Halladay.
Because he's 22 games into his career, yeah.
Exactly. But would his low point be Chris Carpenter or something like that? I can see that. I think he's going to be I feel like I should be knocking on wood when I say this, but if he stays healthy, I would not be surprised by the end of the year. He's not sort of the de facto number 2 in this staff. I'm not a big fan of saying this guy's an ace. This guy isn't. I mean, Barker gets into that all the time. I said, Kevin, there are like 4 aces in baseball. The rest of them, there's a bunch of real good number 1s. And a bunch of real good number 2s. But I think by the end of this year, I think Jose Barrios can be on a different level than anybody else in this rotation. But I think Alek Manoah will be right there with him. And that's not to take anything away from Kevin Gausman, who is going to be perfectly fine. But I really think that I look at what Alek Manoah did to the New York Yankees. I look at what he did this weekend, and I mean, this isn't anywhere near as good as he was last year when he was at his peak. I mean, you can tell he's still sort of feeling his way through. He talked about not really having the feel of the change up. The first pitch change he threw to Stephen Voigt that was hit out for the home run. That's not going to happen that often. Mm-hmm. What amazes me about Alek Manoah, though, and I wish I had the stats in front of me, but they showed it on Blue Jay Central before his first start of the year. Alek Manoah's numbers against the 3, 4, and 5 hitters in a lineup, they're there with Max Scherzer's.
Wow.
Comparing his numbers against 3, 4, and 5 last year, and he fits into the top 5 alongside of guys like Max Scherzer. And that tells me if you are able to dominate the middle of the order at a young age, I mean, how can you not say that? How can you not say the sky's a limit for him? And he's got all the other stuff you like to see, right? He's got the arrogance. He's obviously got the size, but he's very comfortable with himself on the mound and talking about himself. You know, you talk to Alec about things like, we asked him one time about, will you use PitchCom? And he said, I'm a visual learner. Like I don't know. I still like to see the signs being flashed. You know, pitching coaches tell me stuff, but I need to see it with my own eyes. And he was talking about Kevin Gausman and how, you know, I'd like to incorporate some of the stuff that Kevin Gausman does with his changeup, but I need to see what it actually is. He can't tell me over the phone, look, I take my finger like this and move it. Like, I need to see it. And I thought, man, this is a guy that really understands how to use all the information he has and filter out the stuff, right? And I remember, and I tell the story all the time, I had a conversation with Paul Quantrill one time, and we were talking about his son, Cal. And we were talking about Cal's development as a pitcher, and Paul said, I told Cal very quickly, there's something every major league player has to learn at some point early in their career. And that's how to tell your superior or your coach to fuck off.
Right.
And really what he's saying is you have to tell him that great, that's enough. That's not me. And I think Alec, from talking to people, is like that. Now, he's not going to probably use those words, but he's like that. He is not afraid to say, this is what I'm about. This is what I have to do to perform. And, you know, I just think you watch that dude at Yankee Stadium standing on the mound, and there are guys you watch pitcher play at Yankee Stadium and you go, the stage is made for him. He just like sucks up all the energy and sucks up everything in the stage. And, you know, he does it in a way that makes you realize that he realizes that the game doesn't start until he throws the pitch. It's his game. He owns the field.
You kind of touched on it there. Like, that is one thing that has stood out to me about Alek Manoah is that his confidence level, his mental acumen, you know, like there were a couple times last year where he was roughed up a little bit. I don't think we've really seen him be truly roughed up, but roughed up a little bit, pulled from the game in the fourth. And there's a lot of times you see 23-year-old kids getting pulled where they come into the dugout and they're throwing their glove and they're all upset and nobody should talk to them for a while. And he was the complete opposite, right? Instantly, he's talking to the catcher. He's talking to the coach. He's going over what he can do. Like, just the maturity level on a young pitcher like that, it just stood out to me. I was just like, This is crazy to see.
You know what I like about him? When he comes out of a game and he hasn't pitched well, we haven't seen it that often, but when he comes out of a game and he hasn't pitched well, he goes in and does his stuff that pitchers do after games, and then he comes out and sits in the dugout. Same thing, we've seen that with Jose Barrios in games where he hasn't had a good game. He'll go in, you know, get rubbed down or whatever the hell it is they do, and come out and sit in the dugout and be on the front step, or quite often sit over in that corner where Springer and all those guys are. And that, that kind of sends a signal to your teammates, right? That you are, even if you kind of stunk the joint out that night, you're not embarrassed by it. You got things under control. You can't wait to get the ball the next time. And I think it's really important. I think a lot of it goes back to his upbringing. This is a guy, we all know the story. This is a guy who came from nothing, and he's told the story about single mom who had to cut back on what she ate so her two growing boys could eat. And it's all true. I mean, this story's been checked out by people who do that. It's all true. And I just think I think he appreciates what he has and understands that there's a lot more ahead of him. Mm-hmm. And I think he just likes where he is right now, and he likes what he's doing. And that I think for a young pitcher is that just makes all the things you were going to go through, all the learning experiences, easier to digest when you're happy with who you are and happy where you are.
He's such a baseball guy. I've heard him refer to himself in interviews as big-bodied. Like, yeah. Only a pitcher would do that, right? Like,
yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, he is. He is what he is, Yeah. And I think the Jays as an organization, when they brought him in and when they drafted him, I'll give the Jays credit for this. It's something Dante Bichette said about Bo. When Bo was drafted, Dante said, we were so happy we were drafted by the Blue Jays because they were the only organization that when they sat down and talked to the family, they were the only organization that didn't say to Bo, hey, that leg kick thing you're doing? Yeah, that's kind of the one part of your game we're not all that thrilled with. And Dante said the Jays were the only organization that said, fine, we'd like to see you maybe control it a little bit with 2 strikes, but if it's working, if it works in the minors, if it works at single A and double A and in the majors, don't change anything. And the Jays under Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins really do have that mindset. Like they don't put people, for an organization that's really analytically inclined, they don't put people into molds. They're prepared to let somebody do something outside the box as long as it works.
So let's talk catching really quick here. It is because personally I think it's one of the most intensive positions in all of sport. It's just, you see it time and time again, right? It takes 4 to 5 years in the bigs for guys to just be able to call a good game, to be comfortable managing a pitching staff, to even get to know the psychology of their pitching, let alone taking care of things on the other side of the plate. And I mean, we just saw it firsthand with Danny Jansen, who between the end of last season and before the injury this season seemed to kind of be putting it all together. So my question is, Alejandro Kirk and even Gabriel Moreno, I know he's yet to be called up, but both incredibly highly touted. What is a reasonable expectations for fans to have of Kirk in 2022, and if Moreno gets called up, same sort of expectations?
I'll tell you, I don't know, and I don't mean to skirt the question. I don't know what to expect from Alejandro Kirk, because this is a guy who has, going into this year, had only started 48 games behind the plate. Suddenly he's found himself as the everyday starter for a team that is expected to win a pennant, go to the playoffs, maybe win a World Series. We heard all along that the bat has preceded his defensive skills. I haven't seen, I've been a little disappointed with what I've seen from him offensively, but enough people say that don't worry about it, it's there, that I'm prepared to just kind of set that aside right now. I'm interested in how he calls a game and how he works behind the plate. And everything I've been told is that the development in his work behind the plate from last year to where we are now has been remarkable. First of all, his command of English improved, and which has allowed him to communicate more freely with the pitchers. Everybody you talk to in that team says that he is the best catcher on the staff at stealing the low strike. I mean, Robbie Ray worked with him last year and won a Cy Young Award. So I'm more confident with the notion, or more comfortable with the notion, of him catching 4 or 5 days out of 7 now than I would have been in spring training. I think the injury to Danny Jansen in some ways is going to help bring some clarity to the Blue Jays catching situation, because we know that Gabriel Moreno is the catcher of the future. Dan Shulman said today he wouldn't be surprised if we see him up maybe in May, because the rosters are going to be stabilized in May. You're going to have 13 position players. Do the Jays really need, if you look at where their balance is right now, do they really need Kato? I don't know. I mean, they've got Raimel Tapia, they've got Bradley Zimmer, Biggio gives you cover at a bunch of positions. Santiago Espinal can play shortstop if you need him. Maybe there is an avenue where the Jays do need a third catcher, because let's face it, you're probably also going to have to pinch run for Alejandro Kirk at times. So I think
you could get away with not saying probably there, but yes.
Probably, yeah. But I think that what this is going to allow us to do is get a read as we get to the trade deadline as to where Alejandro Kirk is, because we know that Alejandro Kirk is a guy that other teams are intrigued in as well. The Cleveland Guardians had a scout follow him around all spring training. So we know that's a thing. That's not like bad reporter rumors. A lot of teams are interested in Kirk because they're looking at the Jays, catcher of the future, and Danny Jansen. Clearly, if you're going to look at the Jays and say, where is there a little bit of depth, it would be at the catching position. So I think this is good, because we're going to get a run at Alejandro Kirk for probably 4 weeks. And then hopefully Danny Jansen's back. And as they get closer to the trade deadline, and the Jays are going to have to make a trade for pitching. They just are. We know it. We all know it right now. There's going to be another bullpen arm here or another starter. I mean, there just is. This is going to allow the Jays, as they get to the deadline, to take a step back and say, okay, we have Danny Jansen, and teams also like Danny Jansen. We have Alejandro Kirk. I mean, if Alejandro Kirk at the end of this run of games is giving you more production than Danny Jansen gives you, and there hasn't been a drop off in defense, now if you're the Jays, maybe you're sitting back and saying, is our long-term future Kirk and Moreno as opposed to Jansen and Moreno? So it's a storyline that will really be interesting, to follow, because if Moreno were to make this team next year as the everyday catcher, I can see Alejandro Kirk being more useful to the Jays as a DH/catcher than I can Danny Jansen. I don't want Danny Jansen DHing, right?
Yeah.
So that is one of the more interesting scenarios. And as I said, I would never say it's a good thing that anybody got hurt, but I think the fact that we're going to get a read of Alejandro Kirk at the major league level right now is probably a positive thing. I'll just admit, I have no idea where it's going to go. I have no idea where it's going to go.
Okay, before we get to listener questions, I know that
I got a little more time, so we're okay.
Okay.
I was we're fine for time, so don't sweat it.
Okay, I did want to bring up the mark of madman, Jordan Romano, because he has been incredible. Mm-hmm. I mean, 2020, he kind of appeared as like one of the high leverage guys on this team. 2021, he became the best reliever in this organization, and he is putting on a clinic to start the 2022 season. Do you see him moving into that Liam Hendricks, Josh Hader, elite level reliever? And if not, what do you need to see from him in 2022 to put him in that upper top echelon?
I mean, I don't think he would be Liam Hendricks, only because Liam Hendricks can give me 1 2/3, 2 innings if I need, right? He can do that. That's not Jordan right now. Can he close for a team that, for a team that goes to the World Series? Yes. Can he be the only closer in a team that goes to the World Series? I might like somebody else with a little bit of swing and miss stuff in there. When we heard that the Jays were interested in Kenley Jansen, I remember thinking that would make a lot of sense because Kenley Jansen can't give you 50 saves anymore. Probably can't give you 40 saves anymore. But can he give you 20 saves and help someone else get 30 saves? Probably. So that's my one holdback with Romano. That's the only holdback. Look, I'll give the guy credit. We knew at the end of the year, we found out at the end of the year, the guy pitched hurt and rolled off all those consecutive saves for a team that finished a game out of a playoff spot. And I don't think there's any doubt the stuff is there. But I really like Jordan, and I would love Jordan to be the best closer in the American League. I just don't know yet if I'm all in on him as the only guy they can have. I'll put it this way. Would I mind him getting the ball in the 7th game of the World Series? No, I really wouldn't. But would I like to have somebody else get the ball in game 6 of the World Series so that he could get it in game 7? Maybe. I'd like to have that other swing and miss component there that I don't have right now. But I mean, you know what? They've won 6 games. He saved 6 of them. We've got 20 games come out against the Red Sox, the Yankees, and Houston. You know, we'll have a better idea by the end of those 20 games. But that is my only holdback with Jordan Romano is I would feel a lot more comfortable if there was somebody else down there alongside him.
So let's get crazy here, Jeff. Does Vladdy finish the season with more home runs, or does Jordan Romano finish with more saves? Romano's up 6-5.
I think Vladdy. Oh, that's good. No, I think Vladdy hits more home runs. I think Vladdy's going to have 50 home runs. I think Vladdy's going to win the Triple Crown award this year. I think Vladdy's going to win the MVP award this year. I really do. I really do. And I'm all in on him. I really am. I covered his dad when his dad came up in Montreal. I covered his first 4 years. And I mean, I love Vladdy Sr., but Vladdy Jr. is a much smarter, much better hitter than his dad. He really is. Vladdy Sr., Mickey Hatcher, when he was the hitting coach of the Angels, told me watching Vladdy Sr. at the plate was like watching a baseball player with a tennis racket. Because he said the ball can bounce. It doesn't matter where you throw it. The guy's going to be making contact like that. He's going to be making contact like that, which is true. Vladdy Sr. was just, I mean, his ability to hit a ball that bounced or was obscene. But Vladdy Jr. is a smarter hitter. And I think a lot of that is a product of the time he came up, right? Vladdy Sr. didn't have someone to follow, right? Vladdy Jr. had Vladdy Sr. to follow. So he had that kind of that role model. And of course, he had access to technology and frankly, better nutrition than his dad did, all that stuff. I think he is going to be, he will win the Triple Crown this year. He will be the MVP. I'm prepared to say that by the time I've stopped writing or working or talking, he's probably going to be, other than Barry Bonds, the best player I've seen. Like, I'm just all in on him.
Well, as Jays fans, I loved everything you just said there, Jeff. So
now, hopefully I'm right on this, but he does, and people I talk to around the game, like scouts, when you go to the ballpark, you talk to guys. The way baseball people talk about Vladdy, the way guys who played the game talk about Vladdy, you don't hear that from a lot of baseball people generally about a young player. There's always like Bo Bichette's a great player. You talk to guys about Bo Bichette, go, yeah, but you don't get that with Vladdy. The only caveat surrounding Vladdy was always his weight. And the one thing that has kind of annoyed me is looking back at the COVID interrupted year. All we did, we being us in the media, all we did was hammer on Vladdy for his weight initially. At the end of the year, this is a kid who had lost someplace in the neighborhood of 20 pounds. He was still heavy. He was still way too big, but Vladdy played every day in that season. He lost weight. I remember saying this in our final telecast when I was doing Blue Jay Central, that I kind of feel I feel like we haven't given this kid his due for starting to take care of himself and trying to take care of himself. And it's really a good story because Vladdy goes down to the Dominican Republic. He's got a great life down there. There's a lot of folks who want a bit of his time, right? There's a lot of people cooking food for him. There's a lot of people who want to go out and have some cervezas with him. And Vladdy's a real social dude. Like, he's a really lovely, lovely guy. And the fact that he has been able to do what he has done to his body, to me, that was the one hurdle, if you want to call it, that I needed to see him get over. And when I saw him last year, I said, sky's the limit for this kid. Like, don't bother talking to me about weight or whether or not he can play first base or any of that nonsense. It's all bullshit. He's Vladdy. He's going to go on and be one of the best players that the Jays have ever seen. And I truly believe that.
And you're not alone. We've talked to a lot of people who have said the same thing. I mean, the guy is generational. There's no doubt.
It's at some point I want to be around here. I want to be around here to see the contract that he signs. Right. That's what I want to see. Yeah. That's what I want to see. That will be a remarkable day. That will be a remarkable day because I don't know what do you pay this guy?
Well, let me jump in here because this is where our first listener question comes in. Is how irresponsible should this Blue Jays team go to keep Vladdy a career Blue Jay?
Oh, I'd be as irresponsible as hell. Now, it's not my money. It's not my money. I look at the money that Fernando Tatis got and the length of contract Fernando Tatis got. I look at what Juan Soto's probably going to get. I understand these are different guys, different body types. But Fernando Tatis Jr., for all his physical attributes, he's been hurt a fair amount early in his career, right?
At least Vladdy doesn't have a motorbike.
At least Vladdy, not that we know of. Look, I think given the way ownership has operated in the past few years, I think they'll get Vladdy signed to a multi-year contract. I think it'll probably get done next year. Will it be one of those 10-year deals? Part of me thinks it will. Part of me thinks that this ownership, especially if he has the type of year this year that we think he's going to have, the thing about this ownership is, because people are saying, okay, if he has another year, if he has a year this year that's even better than last year, then they're not going to be able to afford him. It's better that they address the situation now. And I don't think this ownership thinks this that way. I think this ownership would rather see Vladdy have a good year, have a great year this year. And if it costs them an extra $30 million to see him have a good year this year, they'll go, yeah, okay, we'll pay the extra. If it's going to mean that we're going to have to sign him at 10 years at an average of 27.5 a year instead of an average of 22.5 a year, whatever. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it. So I have no doubt that they'll eventually sign him to that market settling franchise record contract. I don't have any doubt about that.
How are you on time, Jeff? We really appreciate how generous.
I'm fine. I checked. I'm good. I got as much time as you guys need. So what I thought I had to do, I don't have to do. I got somebody else taking care of it for me. So that's it. Won't be done as well as if I did it, but
of course. But Parker will do his best.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it'll work. I'll go in and fix it up later anyhow. So
we'll let Adam get to listener questions in 1 second, but before we do that, I did just wish to get your opinion on, and you brought it up here earlier in the cast, From here, the schedule gets pretty hairy. It's Boston, Houston, Boston, Houston, New York. No days off. 16 straight games against some of the best teams out there. What do you want to see from the Jays out of this 16-game stint here?
I have this theory that right now the Jays, and I talked to Barker about this, and he's finally coming around with it. And it's a bit of a conspiracy theory. I think the Jays have looked at their rotation and they've gone, hey, the first 3 guys are pretty good. After that, well, we kind of don't know what we have. So I think the Jays are basically managing games right now to win the games that Manoah, Barrios, and Gosman start. The other 2, I mean, if Kikuchi is going to give you 3 1/3 and 80 pitches, I think what you do is you look at the game, you go, look, okay, are we down 6-1? We have to manage it one way. Are we down 3-1? Well, you have to manage it a different way. I think Charlie's got sort of an A bullpen and a B bullpen. And if we can win this game, we'll use these guys. If this game's a write-off, we're not going to run up the white flag, but we're not exactly going to burn somebody like an Adam Simber in a game we're probably going to lose. So I think the Jays are quietly thinking, win every series in the first month. Try to win every series or split every series. Do whatever you have to do to win 2 of 3, 2 of 3, 2 of 3, 2 of 3. So I think in the 16 games, and I haven't looked ahead I haven't done all the matchups. The one thing we really don't know is how the border restrictions are going to impact the Red Sox and Yankees coming into Toronto, because I still don't know, other than Tanner Houck, I don't know who in the Red Sox won't be able to make the trip. I don't know, is Aaron Judge going to be able to come here? Do we know if Aaron Judge is vaccinated? So this all has to factor into it. But if the Jays over 16, these next 16 games could go 12-4, 12-4 would be a lot. What am I saying? If they could go 10-6, they could go 4 games over 500 against these teams. Houston's going to be tough, because I think we've all forgotten how good the Houston Astros really are. But if they can go 10-6, 11-5, I'd be okay with it. Even 9-7 would be fine, but 10-6 would be good. 10-6 would be good. 8-8 is possible, but I think they should at least be able to get 10 wins in this stretch of games. And if they do that, and Teoscar Hernandez comes back, and Danny Jansen's healthy, and you say Kikuchi is capable of even giving them 4 2/3, I think they'll be more than happy with that if we reach the end of the schedule and they are where they are. Because I really, after seeing the Yankees a lot, the Yankees didn't scare me going into the year, because I think Tampa Bay and Toronto are much better teams than the Yankees. The Yankees have a good bullpen, I'll give them that, but they're old. They're not very athletic. After seeing the Yankees now, and they don't really scare me that much. They don't scare me. I kind of thought the American League East was going to be 4 teams fighting out all along. I think at some point there's going to be a little separation between the Jays and Rays and Yankees and Red Sox.
Do you put the Red Sox in the similar category as the Yankees? Do you think they're going to? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, their pitching's not. Their bullpen's not as good as the Yankees. I don't know what they're going to get out of James Paxton and Chris Sale. To me, the most important single pitcher in this division is Luis Severino. If he pitches the way he did against the Jays, if that's the guy the Yankees are going to get, then I think, okay, that's a thing that takes the Yankees a bit above Boston. And I have to tell you, knowing a bit about that market, about the Boston market, I think the contractual issues with Xander Bogaerts and Rafael Devers, they're going to surface. If that team goes through a 5 or 6 game losing streak, or one of those 2 guys has a really, really lousy patch, that's going to surface as a talking point in that city. I'm just not, for someone who picked all 4 AL East teams to go to the playoffs at the start of the year, I'm surprised at how quickly I've jumped off the Red Sox and sort of the Yankees bandwagon.
I did the same thing. I picked all 4, and now I am regretting it.
I think they still might be. They might all four make it, but as I said, it wouldn't surprise me if there's a bit of a gap between the Rays. I think the Rays and Jays are just on a little different level right now than those two teams.
All right, Jeff, we're gonna go to listener questions here. If we don't get as many in as we can, we'll hear it from our listeners. So go ahead, Adam.
All right. So first one is a simple one. Vladdy Gold Glove at first base in his career.
No.
All right.
Doesn't mean he's not going to be a decent defender, but I don't see a Gold Glove. I don't see a Gold Glove. There's a lot of really good defensive first basemen in the game. I don't see it for Vladdy.
All right. You touched on this earlier, but how does covering Guerrero Jr. differ from covering his father's early career? And what was the hype like between the two?
I mean, it's interesting because Vladdy Sr. came up at a time where minor league games weren't like you couldn't follow them online, right? Mm-hmm. You couldn't follow them on streaming. So all you knew about Vladdy was what the people in the organization said, what the players who played with him said. And Vladdy was the whole story around Vladdy, signed for whatever it was, $2,500, showing up without baseball shoes. When he was at Double-A, the stories about him hitting a ball over the fence in Harrisburg on a ball that bounced in front of home plate, which, there are a million people who swear they were at that game. There are at least 30 minor league players who'll tell you they're at that game. Cliff Floyd and Rondell White both went to Double-A. They'll tell you everybody in Harrisburg saw that. It was different. When Vladdy Sr. showed up, there was a much greater sense of mystery to him than Vladdy Jr. Vladdy Sr. didn't wear batting gloves. He didn't have any jewelry. He was this guy who just showed up and would literally grab a bat. He'd grab whatever bat was in the bat rack and go in and hit home runs. And there was it was like a Vladdy came up almost as a literal character, right? And there wasn't that mystery with Junior because, we know how much he signed for. It's a matter of record. We saw him at the ballpark in Toronto after he signed the contract. We followed him online. We saw him in spring training, all of this stuff. So in some ways, it was probably more fun with Vladdy Sr. because you really got the sense that that there was this, like I said, almost this literary aspect to it. It was all word of mouth about how good he was. Vladdy Jr., though, is, he's done a couple of interviews in English on TV. And he won't do group interviews in English. He won't do radio interviews in English, which is fine. I have no problem with players, guys being uncomfortable and needing a translator. Hey, we should all speak Spanish. If it's that important for me to get Vladdy in my radio show, I should be able to speak Spanish. So I have no problem with that. I think he is more aware of the player he is going to be than Vlad Sr.
Okay.
And I think he will embrace it more. I don't think Vlad Sr. really cared about whether or not he was in the home run derby. I cannot imagine Vlad Sr. ever saying that you saw the trailer, now here's the movie.
Yeah.
And also, and I got to say, I mean, Vlad Sr. was from the backwoods of the Dominican. I remember talking to Moises Alou one day, and I remember saying to him one time, man, if only Vladdy spoke English, it'd be great, because I'd like to be able to pick his mind about the story. And Mo looked at me and said, Jeff, we can't even understand him in Spanish. So he was, his background, Vladdy Jr.'s father was a millionaire ball player. Vladdy Sr.'s family were dirt poor. Mm-hmm. So that is That's the difference between the two. I know it's a long answer, but I am very fond of the whole Guerrero story and the Guerrero family, because both of them are the same thing. Both of them are really fundamentally decent people.
Well, we had Anthony Telford on the show recently, and he told a story. Of course, he was a bullpen pitcher with the Expos.
Yeah.
Off-season pitching coach for Nate Pearson and some of the guys there, and he was talking about having a bit of a run-in with Vladdy Sr. in the clubhouse back in the late 90s, and they were playing an American League team, and Vladdy was being given the day off and as DH, and he was in the clubhouse just playing PlayStation. Of course, this was, and so Telford goes to Alou, Felipe there, and he's like, what's going on? And he's like, just leave him be. He's fine. And so same thing. He's just being a kid, and he goes into the dugout. He's not paying attention. He's just doing his thing. And Telford finally goes up and is like, will you get ready for the game? And Vladdy just smiles at him and is like, I am ready. Literally, he goes up to his first at bat, and Telford said the ball bounced off the ground. He was looking at Telford, refused to take any practice swings, just looking at him smiling, and then a ball bounced off the ground, and he hit it for a double, and gets to second base and just does a salute to Telford, and he's like, and I never said anything to him again. Let him do whatever he wanted.
FP Santangelo tells a great story about Vladdy having to go to the washroom for whatever reason, and he was in the washroom while he was in the supposed to be in the on deck circle. He comes out and he's running and he's doing his pants up, doing his flash, doing his up. He grabs a bat and goes up to home plate, and Santangelo looks and goes, Vladdy, it's my bat. You know what? Vladdy just kind of waves him off. Home run using Santangelo's bat.
Amazing.
Yeah. He said he would literally just for giggles late in the year, he would just go up to the bat rack, just pull this one out and go and swing with it. He was, I often wonder what he would have been if he had come up in this time with all the technology and all the, and he was always, the way he ran like a guy was going to blow his knee out. He just did. Everything was 350%. He'd land on first base like that. There was no sense of self-preservation. And I always remember thinking, and I think of it now when I watch Junior, man, if you had put Senior in this era and given him all the stuff Vladdy has, he's already a Hall of Famer.
He's a Hall of Famer, exactly.
But man, he would have been Superman. He really would have been Superman.
All right, we've got a Hamilton question for you.
There you go.
So this one comes in from one of our Hamilton listeners. Says, what is the best flavor of wings at Red Rockets in Hamilton? That means nothing to me, but does it mean something to you as a Hamilton local?
This is going to really disappoint the listener. I like a lot of food.
Okay.
There are some food stuffs I don't like. Chicken wings, the bone.
I knew you were going to get to that.
The bones, man. I'm telling you, man, it's like eating. I got a thing about limbs. I got a thing about it. I swear to God, it's hard to explain. Drumsticks, I can kind of close my eyes with the drumstick. Okay, I got a thing about limbs and little bones. And at the same time, boneless wings,
not quite the same thing.
Balls. What the hell's a chicken ball? What's a boneless wing? So I will say this, though. My default position with anything spicy or barbecued or anything like that is always Kansas City barbecue.
All right.
I don't know if that makes buffalo wings. Forget it. I don't want any. I want something with a little sweet. I want something with a little pepper in it. And if it's gooey, that's kind of okay. But I just kind of need that sweet and peppery thing. I know it's a horrible answer, but it's true, man.
That's good.
I love it.
Love the honesty.
I go into a bar and there's nothing worse than sitting down and seeing somebody's, the leftovers of wings. It looks like surgery. Like it does. I'm looking at this and goes, what the hell is there's little bits of bone sticking out this way and gristle, and
we've lost all of our vegan listeners, so this is great. Glad we saved that one for the end. All right, one last quick one here, and then we'll let you go.
But it's true, man. It's a real pussy thing to say, but it's
all right. So last listener question, then we'll let you go. Again, thank you so much for generosity with your time here at the end. So when the Jays play the Dodgers in the World Series, who do you have winning that series?
I think I picked Dodgers over Jays
yeah.
in the World Series this year. I think that's what my pick was. Yeah, I'd pick the Dodgers over the Jays, and I'd go probably 5 games, because everybody who makes the World Series picks goes 6 or 7 games because they're scared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you're gonna pick a World Series, I would say Dodgers in 5.
Push your chips in, yeah.
I would say Dodgers in 5. But I do believe the Jays. I have said that I think the Jays will win a World Series at some point in the next 3 years, and I do believe they will win a World Series, not just go to one, but win a World Series at some point in the next 3 years. But, if they're in against the Dodgers this year, the Dodgers are so good.
Aren't they?
The Dodgers are so good.
All right, Jeff, thank you so very much for being so generous with your time. We really appreciate you
Thank you
being on the show. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for your patience.